Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. Wow, what a week that was. This past week in not just WWE, AEW, the pro wrestling world has a lot of interesting stuff going on these days. And welcome to the Juice Box to talk about it here. I'm Juice Springsteen. We've got a lot of stuff to pack in here. I'm sure we'll get to all of it within 50 to 55 minutes like we normally do here on this program. But yeah, this was a interesting last week and a half week since I've spoken to everybody here. We had the Backlash PLE. We've had a quote pay-per-view on TBS worthy Dynamite, which was pretty damn good. A lot of interesting storylines coming out of all of those shows, including Raw, obviously SmackDown. Later on tonight, so we won't be able to, we don't know Seth Rollins' opponent at Night of Champions for the new WWE World Heavyweight Championship. However, we at least know that Seth is in there, and we do know the other matches that will be taking place to determine his opponent at that show. Before we get into any of that, let's just hit the basics. Once again, this is the Juice Box. I'm Juice Springsteen. Follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. You can also follow my wrestling t-shirt collections Instagram page at Juicy Wrestling Closet. This show is on Podbean, juicysteen.podbean.com. This show is also on Google Podcasts and iTunes. If you could give a rating and review on both or any of those, that would be fantastic. Any support is appreciated from you. Yeah, what an interesting couple of days here. I'm not sure how we'll tackle this whole thing. I guess we could kind of go, we could start with AEW and then proceed into the Backlash Raw of it all, because AEW is most fresh, at least in my mind. Wow, I mean, again, Tony Khan, among other people in AEW, referred to Dynamite this past Wednesday as a pay-per-view on TBS, which is a lot of hype for a show that did not happen yet, just to put that out there. But they knew they had a lot of good stuff cooking, and they did. In addition to Dynamite this past Wednesday, the rumors have been running rampant of a potential streaming deal between AEW and Warner, aka HBO Max, or it will just be known as Max going forward, which the rumors have been 5 years. The rumors have been upwards of $1 billion. I was on a few Twitter Spaces in the last week discussing certain things, and this topic did come up, and I presented that I do believe that AEW will get a 3 to 5 year deal done on streaming. Now the streaming details still are up in the air. We don't really know. This is all hearsay, and I would say that it's upwards of $550 to $750 million in that deal, which would be incredible for AEW, which would also drive up the price for WWE streaming rights, which I do believe are coming up sooner rather than later with Peacock. But with that being said, and those rumors swirling around with what type of money AEW might garner and what have you, we had a show last night that the Dynamite, in between some of the matches, we had Tony Khan say, what he said a few times before in his past, that we have an announcement, and that announcement is that next week we'll have another announcement. However, this announcement that's going to happen next Wednesday does honestly seem like potentially the biggest announcement that AEW's ever had. And I don't mean that as sarcasm. I mean that as genuine fact, because next week, I do believe next Wednesday, is the Warner Upfront, which Warner execs and those in the suits, as they say, will be discussing, I guess, future plans and just stuff around Warner and those involved. And it's taking place at the theater at Madison Square Garden. And I do believe that at this upfront, Tony Khan or, AEW in general will announce that they will have agreed to a streaming deal with Max, which is a huge, huge, huge success for this company, which was once referred to as a t-shirt company. Now, 4 years almost in, and having 60,000 plus seats already sold for All In, which happens a week before All Out. Now, I bring this up at this point again because All Out the following week, which is the Labor Day weekend pay-per-view, is on pay-per-view, and it has been announced as such. Now, All In, which is named so wonderfully after the 2018 one-off, quote-unquote, show that kind of launched the thought and idea of AEW going forward. That was called All In as well, and that was those guys can't sell out a 10,000-seat arena, and they did. And here we are talking about a potential $500+ million deal for streaming rights for AEW. But it's called All In, the show before All Out, a week before. And the only thing that we know is that there are tickets being sold and, the capacities and Wembley and it's all this and that, but nothing about where you could watch it at home. Now, obviously, it's not going to, be a house show that's never going to be aired. Clearly, it's going to be aired, and it's clearly going to have some sort of way to watch it if you're not one of the 60,000 plus people that get to go to this show. However, we just don't know in what capacity we will be able, guys like me, will be able to watch that show. And I am under the assumption, again, talking with a couple of other people in the field, as it were, that this show, this all-in show that precedes the all-out show, could be a part of the streaming deal with Max, HBO Max, Warner, whatever you want to call them, where if you are subscribed to that streaming service, you will have access to that show all in. Only if it's only available there. What a coup for AEW to pull that off, because I don't believe that they would try to do back-to-back weeks of $50 pay-per-views. I do think they would try to give this streaming thing a shot with a big show to begin it all, and I do think that's what's going to happen. All In could be another pivotal show for this company when the first one wasn't even for AEW. It hadn't even been established yet we now know the ripple effect that entire show came with and left with, as again, we're talking about a huge deal for this company now that was once referred to as a t-shirt company. But yeah, AEW, really, really strong stuff across the board to be able to get this type of deal potentially done. I know that there's critics out there about, their ratings can only get to a certain height or what have you, but competition's always tight. They've had steady ratings, at least. It's never really been drastically low, and it's, peaks around 1 to 1.1 million. And I think they could get, inch up further than that as time goes on. I mean, sure, the ratings aren't what WWE's ratings are, but clearly something is going right for AEW if Warner is about to drop some major coin on their product and the rights to use their stuff on streaming and what have you. So, all in all, I'm really excited to see what this deal really is and if it gets done. And the ripple effect of that in regards to the WWE deal going forward as well, which could exceed $1 billion for sure, because WWE has been around for 50 plus years. So with that being said, other stuff that happened on Dynamite, we had a great Claudio versus Rey Fenix match to begin the show, which kind of reminded me of the Dean Malenko Rey Mysterio matches from '96. All it was missing was a top rope gutbuster, but I mean, it was still a hell of a contest. We had Orange Cassidy successfully defending his international championship in a match against Daniel Garcia, which was really good. He has been on a tear as a defense, as he defends that TNT title, or the international title, excuse me, over and over almost every week, and is consistently having really, really strong matches. So big things are happening for him. I like to see where he fits on the Double or Nothing card and who challenges for that championship. Who will be challenging for the championship? The tag team, the AEW Tag Team Championship, was finally all squared away with a little stipulation of sorts, where we had FTR responding to if Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal were, they challenged for the titles at Double or Nothing. And in between everything, Mark Briscoe was a part of this segment where FTR just wanted to have Jarrett and Lethal admit that Mark Briscoe was just a pawn to get to this title match and not actually, all on board as big, friends together. And Jarrett and Lethal and Dutt and Satnam Singh all went to the Briscoes' farm, and that was a great skit, I believe, 2 weeks ago. And FTR just didn't buy it, and they said that, if you admit it, we'll give you this whole thing. Mark Briscoe says, hey, I will be the special referee, which is perfect. Cannot wait for that. I do believe it's the first special referee that they've had in AEW. Correct me if I'm wrong. But as this all happens, they get the match, they get the referee deal, and then Mark Briscoe came out and he's like, hey, I want to be the referee, and we can all toast to it. We gave them all tequila, but Sanjay Dutt spits the tequila into Harwood's face, and as this is happening, he can't see what's going on, and there's a little bit of a brawl with the teams. And as it's happening, Mark Briscoe gets pile driven by Dax Harwood, which, again, it's just great old school storytelling of, this guy is friendly with FTR, obviously, big history with the Briscoes and them, and this other tag team is trying to come along and get title shot. And they're trying to, smooch up to Mark Briscoe and think that they're, friendly. And they went to the farm and they're wearing overalls and they're having a good time and they're buddy. And, FTR doesn't buy it. And now we get a little bit of a competition for Mark Briscoe's, friendship, even though now he's a referee. And in that whole thing, when we clearly know FTR is the true friend of Mark Briscoe because of what the Jarrett and Lethal team do, it in turn gets Mark Briscoe dumped on his head by Dax Harwood. So it's going to be a little bit of the, are you guys really with me? Because you pal drove me into the mat last week. Although we all know that FTR is probably on board with Mark. It's just the circumstances at hand. But that's what makes this whole thing really fun, is that it has this old school feel. And you don't know what's happening. You don't really know who's with who and what have you. But I really enjoyed it. Seems like we're going to get Roddy Strong in a Falls Count Anywhere match with Chris Jericho next week, with everybody barred from ringside, which should be cool. Not from ringside, from the building. So we'll see where this match takes place in the building. I'm interested in who could potentially interfere, if it's either Adam Cole or the JAS. Who among, AEW, could we see Kyle O'Reilly interfere here? Well, I don't know what we could potentially see, but I'm looking forward to that as well. Miro, that's right, Miro, who knows where the hell he's been. They cut randomly backstage. Excalibur was like, no, that couldn't be, no way, and they cut back and it's Miro, and he walks right into Tony Khan's office. Couple segments later, they cut to the back. Thunder Rosa's backstage all of a sudden. She walks into Tony Khan's office. Now, it's reported that there is the AEW Collision show potentially coming. Now, here's the thing. Now, I said earlier that Tony Khan, teased announcement was for next week. And I know that I said it was for the deal, but I think it's a two-pronged thing. I do believe they're going to have this Warner deal signed, sealed, and delivered. But in addition to that, they're going to announce the new AEW Collision show, reportedly headed by CM Punk. But he said that because they have so many stars and the talent is, jockeying for position on Dynamite and Rampage and Dark and what have you, although it seems to me that Dark and Dark Elevation are gone, at least for the time being, it should stick with Ring of Honor as that underling show and built itself up to be a little side NXT brand for AEW and just eliminate Dark altogether, and you can find talent that way. I think Collision is going to be their answer to a better 2-hour show that has stacked talent with 2 stacked separate rosters, and I'm hoping that's what they can pull off. But that's what I think Miro and Thunder Rosa were having talks with TK in the back for rather. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. I do believe we're going to get some interesting rosters on these 2 shows. It'll be interesting to see if they swap brands. We'll get into a lot of that talk with the WWE World Heavyweight title situation later, as the title's on Raw, but SmackDown competitors have a SmackDown competitor is going to have a chance at it. So that is going to be something to keep an eye on as well. But yeah, these multiple rosters, multiple shows, a lot of exciting stuff for AEW here. Christian Cage, man, look at this. Christian has always been solid in the ring. I think he's been very underrated on the mic. But this turtleneck wearing, father hating, family loathing Christian Cage heel is so damn good. He was out, it was in Detroit. The fans were, livid. They were not really letting Christian have a word. They were chanting Edge is better and all these things. But my God, Christian he went above and beyond to talk about Wardlow, Arn Anderson, disrespectful lines about them, some controversial stuff as well. Wardlow's father got mentioned here. Christian just absolutely kills it every time he's on the mic, and I really hope he can continue to do that going forward and helping Luchasaurus and Wardlow in this program in that regard. I like this little foursome of talent with Luchasaurus, Christian, Wardlow, and Arn Anderson. I think it got a little bit of intrigue for me. Some more old school heat is great. It's just fantastic. But I mean, some of the quotes, I just looked up some of the quotes. I couldn't recall some of them. He did mention daddy issues with insulting Wardlow's dad and saying that Arn Anderson tossed his real son aside and now he's hitching his wagon to the War Dog. And if you're Ric Flair's lapdog for years and years, I guess that makes you a legend. It's just incredible. Christian was just on fire last night. And again, with a tough crowd to talk over, I thought he did a great job. Julia Hart and Anna Jay had a little bit of a rough match. I mean that in the best and worst way possible. It was a no-holds-barred match. Some brutal stuff in the match. But Julia Hart gets the win here, as she should. And in addition to that, the House of Black were also victorious with an interesting house rules match with 20-second countouts, DQs being enforced, no rope breaks, and the dealer's choice, which was a fun little thing. And the arena lights were also dim for that match. I like these little nuances with the House of Black, and just with certain talent, you get a chance to be above and different than the other groups in the company, and I think it kind of separates House of Black from other groups by having these little intricacies within their own framework of a faction. And let's just get to the main event. This was a doozy. This is arguably the AEW version of Triple H and Austin, with Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega. These guys have had a storied history all the way back to Double or Nothing 2019, which was the first true pay-per-view for AEW. And Kenny Omega, he's in the ring, or he got the launch onto the chip, the poker chip, from Moxley. They had the barbed wire death match. They've had world title matches. But this was a great cage match between the two. Of course, there was a brawl between the Blackpool Combat Club and the Elite, which really kind of started the whole match off without the match actually technically starting. And I thought that it was a great little fracas. We will get to the Gaga of all Gaga when we get to the Backlash review, of course, with that incredible San Juan street fight that I cannot rave more about. But get to the meat and potatoes here. This match was brutal. There was glass. There was blood. There was a barbed wire steel chair that was laid on Moxley's back. And Kenny Omega did the, coup de grace, double stomp, but from the ring mat to Moxley with the chair on his back. But when when Omega landed on the chair with barbed wire, it skidded the barbed wire across Moxley's back. Moments in the match that already were going to be brutal, but because of how they were done, it wasn't that it was done poorly, but you kind of don't account for, what if this kind of slides. And it was just, it was tough to watch, but it was good stuff. And, the end of this match, a V-trigger to Mox, who is standing near the side of the cage, and the one cage wall breaks and they both go to the floor. I thought Kenny had actually hurt his foot, but he didn't, at least, that I'm aware of. Both men were just beaten to shreds here. But, of course, the meat and potatoes here, this is what happened. A heel turn that I predicted on this show. I predicted on Twitter months ago, in fact, in March. The match is coming down to the end here. And because of that cage door, not the cage door, but that wall, the mesh being broken by the V-trigger on Mox by Omega, it's set up for Moxley grabbing the screwdriver, his trademark screwdriver that he had been using countless times to brutalize opponents over the past couple of weeks and months as a part of the BCC. And Don freaking Callis ends up with the screwdriver, and as Kenny Omega is about to pin Jon Moxley, Don Callis stabs Kenny Omega in the face with the screwdriver, effectively turning on him. Not necessarily joining the Blackpool Combat Club, at least of yet. But, my God, Don Callis, the invisible hand, finally turning heel on Kenny Omega after all this time of being a legendary, one right hand man to Kenny Omega when he was AEW champion for all those months. He helped him win the title. But all these little nuances with the getting collar Don Callis did in that backstage brawl, which I thought was a work. Everybody said it wasn't. I was dead certain it was a work from the beginning. And then all the little intricacies, the nuance of what was it? Don Callis was in the ring and he acted as if he got hit, and there was just so many little parts that I was like, you know what, this is not adding up. If it's going to add up to something, it's going to be the Don Callis turns heel on Kenny Omega. And now we got that full-fledged face turn for Kenny. And now, hopefully, we can see a really strong babyface run by Kenny Omega as we go into the summer to see where things stand. I don't know if we're going to get a blood and guts match between the Elite and the BCC, although I think it would be apropos. We've seen this cage match, so I don't know if they'll really pull the V trigger on the Blood and Guts match, but we'll see. Because I think it's going to be 5-on-5 if that's the case. But I mean, you got Kenny and the Bucks. Takeshita maybe, Hangman maybe. On the other side, it's Wheeler and Mox and Claudio and Bryan. So I mean, you could get a fifth guy there. But I think it's there. I definitely think that we could see a Blood and Guts match down the line, whether it happens at Double or Nothing or maybe at the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. Remains to be seen, but I look forward to it nevertheless. In fact, if somehow they get Kota Ibushi, have Takeshita turn and be that fifth member of the BCC where you have Takeshita, Yuta, Claudio, Mox, and Bryan versus Kenny, Ibushi, the Young Bucks, and Hangman. I think you got a 5-on-5 right there. But we'll see. But man, what a match. They had the lights out match before. They had the death match. They have all these matches, but this one was, whew. This was a doozy, and the storyline, the booking of the storylines, that was what really intrigued me, is that they pulled this off. And it was a brutal match, and of course it was, but just a good ending. And that's how we're going to transition now into the Backlash review and Raw kind of recap. As we have SmackDown later on tonight, we don't know who will face Seth Rollins. Seth freaking Rollins, who did win the Raw side of the World Heavyweight Championship tournament. Before we get into the entirety of this, I'm going to do a little detour to do my vintage pay-per-view recommendation. We're talking title tournaments. We're talking world title tournaments. Maybe not the best, but I always had a fondness for this particular tournament as to how it ended. And some of the guys that are in there. And I'm talking about WCW Mayhem 1999. This was the inaugural Mayhem event. They only did it one more year after this in 2000. But this was an interesting show, to say the least. The tournament had happened on Nitro and Thunder for weeks leading up to this thing. But I have fond memories of this particular show. It was in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, which they had more success with this pay-per-view than the Leafs have had recently. But man, you get a semi-final between Benoit and Jarrett, who the next month at Starrcade have an incredible ladder match, which you should also go out of your way to look up. Also, we had a semi-final between Bret Hart and Sting, and then of course you get Bret Hart and Chris Benoit in the final match, 17 minutes plus for the vacant WCW World Title. My God, this is a great match. Great little pay-per-view here. Interesting pay-per-view, to say the least. Some of the matches don't, again, it's WCW in 99. This is 1 month removed from the worked shoot Halloween Havoc garbage between Hogan and Sting, and I could go on for, you could hear it there. I'm so exhausted by sometimes even looking up previous WCW historical facts and figures because of how depressing it did become in mid 99 to late 99, all the way obviously 2000 was just abysmal, and that was the end of the road, as we had only 3 pay-per-views in 2001. But I really enjoyed the crowd for this show. Again, Bret and Chris Benoit in front of a Canadian crowd for the WCW World Title. You also get a Bret Hart and Sting match. I think it's a fun little show, and I think everybody should check it out. That is WCW Mayhem 1999. And I do believe it was branded as such due to the WCW Mayhem video game, which is pretty cool. The show was presented by Electronic Arts. EA did the game. It was really cool. So I remember the game very well. I remember this pay-per-view pretty well. And the tagline of Mayhem 1999, the Night of Champions. So how about that? Fun little way to tie in that with the current WWE World Heavyweight Championship tournament that apparently is going to be on Raw, that title, yet we are going to have a Raw and SmackDown man fight for that distinction at Night of Champions. But before we get to the Raw of it all, let's go over Backlash. We had Josh Eisenberg on here last week, did a fantastic job hanging out with me for about an hour, talking shop, talking wrestling, always quoting Seinfeld. But he's always great. I'm sure we're going to have him on for the Night of Champions preview, so be on the lookout for that as well. Love to get him on more and more. Former Chairshot Reality alum. And I did get to watch this show. I got to watch this Backlash show alongside him and Josh Cross, who you guys also heard a couple of weeks ago on the Triple Threat Theater, one of the more successful episodes of this podcast thus far. But yeah, Josh Cross and Josh Eisenberg, got to hang out with them, watch this whole pay-per-view. We had a hell of a time. This is a great show. The first match, Bianca and Io Sky. This is a match, quite frankly, I was not really looking forward to. And if any of the matches were going to start the show, this was the last match I would have thought would have started the show. But man, they killed it. 18 minutes, a one-handed press slam by Bianca. She really sold well for Io. Bailey and Damage Control got kind of involved, but not, I don't know if we're going to see the end of Damage Control or at least the end of Bailey as leader of that group, but Dissension probably is coming sooner rather than later. But this is a great match. Interestingly enough, though, this crowd, which, oh my God, Puerto Rico, have yourself a round of applause. Pat yourself on the back like Barry Horowitz. This, North American fans, I'll just say this, and guilty, I'm one of them. We are so lucky and really spoiled to have damn near every PLE, WrestleManias, mostly SummerSlams, all the incredible shows. Finally, over the last couple of years, we are getting some international flavor. And I'm not just talking Saudi Arabia or the Australia Super Showdown, which Australia could get a PLE in the future, and it'll be a lot better than that Super Showdown, I assure you of that. But we saw it at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view in Montreal about how just they wanted this show so bad. And I know I said North America, but really I'm just saying America because some towns still don't get PLEs. And Montreal got it, and they embraced Sami Zayn so well in KO, and the whole show was just at a fever pitch, and I predicted the same for Puerto Rico, and dare I say, this crowd was hotter than that crowd at Montreal, hotter than the WrestleMania crowd, which is, the crowd that beat all crowds, but this was incredible. And we'll get to in the nitty-gritty here in a little bit, but this first match, I've called her Jane Cena. We all could call her Jane Cena. It's even more cemented that Bianca Belair is Jane Cena after this match. From the opening bell, Io Sky was cheered in this entire contest. Bianca did some offensive moves. She got a little bit of the jeers. It just wasn't 100% Bianca, and I am here for that. But I have a feeling they're going to continue along that Jane Cena, John Cena path. And Bianca, I don't believe, is going to turn heel at least anytime soon. At least as champion. But Io is definitely getting the majority of the cheers during this contest. And I thought it was a great little mismatch. Something we haven't really seen with Bianca is having to fight this match as the face, but she's getting the heel reaction, and I think she navigated it well, and her selling was really, really strong. I thought she sold her arm being in pain very well, and again, one-armed press slam was emphatically awesome. I thought it was a great match, and Bianca won, as I said. So she is still Raw Women's Champion, although she's on SmackDown, so I don't know what they're doing with that. Omos lost another pay-per-view match. Big surprise there. It went longer than I anticipated, 10 minutes, and he did not win. He got a giant curb stomp from the top of the ropes by Seth Rollins, and Seth Rollins, in doing so, got the victory. I don't know what Omos is doing. His character. They build him up as this Nigerian nightmare, this monster, and he gets built up as this huge deal, but he doesn't win to where we can buy him as a huge deal. I mean, Brock Lesnar gave him the F5 and beat him at WrestleMania, but what did that do? Nothing. Omos, can beat up Elias or local talent B, C, me. He could go against me. He could go against anybody. But no matter what, put him on pay-per-view in a one-on-one match where it really, really matters, and he loses. So outside of being an attraction, I really think that WWE doesn't know what to do with Omos. Because to me, it doesn't really give Rollins that big of a victory for beating him. I mean, the finish of the match was cool. But if that's all the match was for, I don't think that this match should have even happened to begin with because it hurts Omos. If you're trying to build him up, they make it seem like they are, but then he can't win a match. He can't beat Rollins. He can't beat Lesnar. Can he beat anybody? God, he had one WrestleMania Backlash win against Lashley last year, and that's it. And even then, I'm sure nothing else. As a tag team, he won, of course, but solo. It's like 1 of 5, or 1 and 5. It's awful. So, I don't know what's next for Omos, but maybe we'll see him go against Roman that Night of Champions and lose again. Triple threat match. This was a shorter match. Theory, Lashley, Bronson Reed. Couple of hosses. Theory is the outlier. Good little match. I'm really hoping that Austin Theory continues this run as U.S. champion. And kind of makes some open challenges. We'll see what he does tonight on SmackDown. And we'll report back next week with all the theory of it all. The Bianca being Raw Women's Champion but being on SmackDown, and Rhea being the SmackDown Women's Champion but being on Raw. We're going to figure all that stuff out, hopefully tonight. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get no answers and it's just as confusing as I report back next week on this program. But speaking of Rhea Ripley, mommy, if you will, I will be giving her a Mother's Day card this weekend. Shout out to Rhea Ripley. She defeated Zelina Vega. We all thought this was coming. We all knew it was going to be this way. But man, Zelina Vega, what an entrance. What a moment for her in front of the Puerto Rican fans. Very emotional as she had the flag. Her gear was PR inspired. It was just a great, great moment before the match and after the match. Very emotional. I was very excited to see her in this spot, getting this moment. We don't know when she'll get more moments like this, but this is you strike when the iron's hot. You're in Puerto Rico. You build up the LWO. You get an opportunity. Maybe she could win, but she didn't. But I didn't detract from the moment whatsoever. But let's lead into these last 3 matches. These are the ones we thought were very crucial to going forward, what was going to happen, especially with the draft being over and we knew where people were going after this. I'm going to start with the Bloodline match, even though it was sandwiched between the 2 biggest matches. But the Bloodline defeated Matt Riddle, Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn. But the intriguing part about this was Jey Uso really wanted to get in the ring. So he slapped Solo Sikoa on the chest to make that happen. And then by the end of the match, it was Solo about to give the spike to Jey. Needless to say, we are seeing Roman Reigns, I do believe, tonight on SmackDown. Hopefully he can sort things out, and hopefully someone can step up and have a credible title match with him at Night of Champions, because at Night of Champions, how is the main champion who's going to have held it for over 1,000 days not defend the title? Because WWE says so, that's why. Man, these last 2 matches, though, not the last 2, but the 2 that made sense, either could have been the main event. I enjoyed how it turned out with where they placed them because of the storyline booking. I think either could have main evented and it wouldn't have been a big deal. Let's start with the Bad Bunny match. So we didn't know what music Bad Bunny was coming out to for this San Juan street fight. We knew that it wasn't going to be Booker T. On Twitter, Bad Bunny did say, I'm going to come out with new music and what have you. He comes out to a song that... So here's the thing. He doesn't announce, right? He doesn't announce what song is going to be, his song to come out to for this match. So you're like, oh, well, like, who knows what it is? Is it going to be a new song? Is it going to be a song that he's, had before? Or like a new conjured up song by WWE? He comes out to Shambaya, which was released late 2017. The cover of the single artwork has Bad Bunny and Ric Flair on a rooftop. And I do believe in the song there's a Ric Flair woo. This was a genius thing to do because all the fans there, young, old, random wrestling fan who's in Puerto Rico, they all knew this song ahead of time. And as soon as it hit the bah, 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 they all knew what it was. And they all sang like every word. The drone shots, here's another sidebar. The drone shots for this show and the SmackDown previous in Puerto Rico, I don't know if it was because of the design of the open air capabilities of that arena in Puerto Rico, but they were able to take a drone, circle it around the outside of the building, and kind of weave its way through the concourse, over the bars, over some fans, through some entranceways, and it comes right out into the main stadium, like the arena portion. And they had the same type of thing with... so the drone shots are great, and I do think that going forward, depending on the design of the building that they have, although with these PLEs being almost exclusively outside or in massive stadiums, they'll be able to pull off some awesome drone shots going forward, and I think it's incredible for their production, which has always been top-notch, but, now they're getting with the times even more. But the entrance for Bad Bunny came from, like, the back... as you see him walking out the entrance. And again, the fans knew every word of this song. It was unbelievable how hot the crowd was for this match and for Bad Bunny and how heated they were against Damian Priest. Just a great, great street fight. I mean, you had the LWO and the Judgment Day go at it. You had Carlito come out. His music was so refreshing to hear. He spit an apple into Dom's face. Carlito should be on the rosters tomorrow. Like, my God. He should be signed immediately. And then, so earlier in the night, Savio Vega came out. Now, I'm not sure if I referenced it, but Bad Bunny, when he attacked Damian Priest on Raw, had a kendo stick that had an inscription of some words that I do believe Savio Vega had on some gear or a kendo stick or a baseball bat, something like that. And it was a tribute to Savio that he had on this kendo stick. Fast forward to Backlash backstage, Savio Vega gifts him a Puerto Rican flag-inspired kendo stick. Fast forward to the match, and Savio Vega makes his return, a little entrance to a version of the Los Boricuas music. As a 90s wrestling fan, I could not be more happy to see Savio Vega there. And I've said for a while that he should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. And I do think he'll get recognized sooner rather than later, potentially in 2024. But he hits a spin kick out in the out there in the ramp, and he pulls off the Quang pose. Now, if you guys are as marky as I can be sometimes and nostalgic for mid-90s wrestling, Savio Vega, before he was Savio Vega and they had nothing for him, in 1994 they gave Savio a slightly ninja-ish Mortal Kombat type-esque character named Quang. And after he would hit these martial arts moves, he would do this like weird motion with his arms and legs to get back in his fighting stance. And he hit that after he hit that spin kick. And I'm getting chills just thinking about it. I was just so happy to see him, Carlito, the LWO. Just a great, great match all around. Great Gaga. This is exactly what, when people say overbooked matches, there's bad overbooking, there's convoluted booking, and then there's like Pat Patterson Gaga. And this was to such an extent, but it was like the perfect amount of interference and surprise and appearances and weapons and falcon arrows through part of the set that back in the staging area onto Bad Bunny, and Bad Bunny had welts from the kendo stick, and Bad Bunny hit falcon arrows. He hit a Michinoku driver. He hit the Bunny Destroyer to win. I cannot praise this match any more than everybody else has. But you should go out of your way to try to find it on Peacock and watch this thing. It was that damn good. And look, give me WrestleMania 40, Logan Paul versus Bad Bunny. Put that on the show. I think they could handle it. I truly think both those guys could handle a match where they're not having a traditional wrestler around them. I really honestly think if they... Look, it's May 11th, May 12th, whatever, whenever you listen to this. Maybe it's some other time. WrestleMania is 11 months away. If you don't think they could get Logan Paul and Bad Bunny in the Performance Center for, God, a week, 2 weeks to really hash out how to do a match together, imagine a Logan Paul versus Bad Bunny match. The social media interactions, the engagements on social media, the media outlets picking up, God, every piece of those two being involved in a match like that. It would be unbelievable. And I'm going to put this flag in the ground right now. Bad Bunny. I'll wait, because I think Logan Paul is actually signed. But I'll say this. The San Juan Street Fight is the greatest celebrity match in the history of WWE. I'll say that right now. You can have your Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam. You can have your Floyd Mayweather and Big Show. You can have your Kevin Green and Mongo McMichael matches. But Bad Bunny and Damian Priest in a San Juan Street Fight takes the cake. Wow. Just, man. It was just a great match. I had so much fun watching that match. Everybody that I was watching it with, we popped for, God, every single thing. It never ended. It was just good stuff all the way through, and I could not be more thrilled that it was so successful. So yeah, Bad Bunny, potentially the greatest celebrity wrestler of all time. Let's get into the last match. The match that, this is why it made sense to me going on last, was that, Damian Priest and Bad Bunny are going to be the most over two guys you have at this particular show. But Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar are the two storyline-driven guys that are not only going to be there on Raw Monday. I know Damian Priest was as well, but not only will they be there on Monday, but their storyline matters so much more than pretty much everything else on the card. And Cody and Brock had a brutal little brawl here. Before the match even got started, it got brutal. It was, I believe, under 11 minutes, maybe even under 10 minutes. Brock Lesnar got a ton of blood here from a hard way, head first into the turnbuckle, the exposed turnbuckle, rather. And I don't believe he bladed. If you watch it, I mean, the camera's right on it, and he hits this thing with such force. I'm assuming it was a planned spot, and I'm assuming it was planned color. But I think it worked out well, and it looked great. And the following night, Cody Rhodes gets the victory on Brock by pin, which I thought was a great little ending. But now let's fast forward to Raw. Last note, Backlash, fantastic. Puerto Rico should get another PLE soon. Do something again next year. Seriously. I don't think you could go wrong with a crowd that's this hot. So definitely should go to Puerto Rico again. I firmly believe that they should, and I really think that they will. I'm sure they're going to go to Australia before then. And like I said, with all these international fans clamoring for it, they're getting Money in the Bank in July. They're getting All In at Wembley. Man, Toronto is getting Forbidden Door, you know? So in Montreal, had Elimination Chamber. It's like everything's going crazy. You know, these PLEs, these pay-per-views going to these major international cities. I think Puerto Rico should get a show next year as well. But let's go to Raw before we head out of this juice box for this week. Time's flown by here, but a lot of good content this past week and a half. So I've been chomping at the bit to discuss it. The WWE World Heavyweight Title Tournament, they had 4 triple threat matches. Now, 2 are going to happen on Raw. 2 are going to happen on SmackDown, which still have not happened. They will happen later on tonight. And in the Raw triple threat here, the first one was Seth freaking Rollins, Damian Priest, and Shinsuke Nakamura. And this, I was pretty certain that the finals of this, at least on the Raw side, was going to be Seth and Cody. At least on that Raw end of things, because they have the history and maybe Brock interferes there and what have you. But Seth Rollins wins this first match. Great match. And look, I'll be frank here. Shinsuke, especially now, Seth Rollins, obviously, and now after the San Juan Street fight and the performance that Damian Priest put on, I would put all 3 of these guys into the upper echelon of the card. I don't know where they'll, fall in the cards going forward. And again, Roman's still on SmackDown dominating, but with this new World Heavyweight title, I would look at least those 3 guys as potential challengers, dare I say champions, with this new title going around. But Seth gets the win, and then in the other one was The Miz, Finn Balor, and Cody Rhodes. 3 great workers again. And this match ended in a, again, storyline-driven way. Lesnar interrupts the whole thing, costs Cody, brutalizes Cody, wants Cody to, pay attention to him. And you look at Lesnar. He had a black eye. He looked roughed up, but looked good. And that's, I think, the purpose of the color and the brutality from Backlash is to put Cody over and to put Brock over now as an even more monster heel, wanting that revenge. And he challenged Cody for a fight at Night of Champions, and Cody accepted. So we're going to see, quote, a fight at Night of Champions between Cody and Brock. Now, it'd be cool to see him in the fight pit, but I do think that could be for some other match down the line with other superstars. But a fight for sure. Hopefully some sort of no DQ match. But they're furthering that storyline, and I do think that whether Cody comes out or as a victor or he gets stretchered out of Saudi Arabia, I still think Cody Rhodes is your front runner to win Money in the Bank in London. But yeah, Finn Balor wins the one match. Seth Rollins wins the other triple threat match. And the main event last Monday was the Finn Balor Seth Rollins rematch from the Universal Championship debut match at SummerSlam 2016 that we all remember being a great match, but the powerbomb into the barricade that injured Finn Balor, and Finn had to relinquish the title. The following night on Raw, they revisited that spot by having Finn powerbomb Seth into the barricade, and he's like, how does that feel? And it was just great storytelling. Once again, these 2 guys have great chemistry in the ring. Great match. And the end was Seth freaking Rollins going on now to Night of Champions. And now is where we get some interesting stuff. Now, this is how we're going to conclude. I'm just going to kind of go over just some thoughts with this final part of the bracket. Seth Rollins is on the Raw side. He will be in the World Heavyweight Championship match at Night of Champions. There are 2 triple threat matches. 2 triple threat matches happening tonight on SmackDown. Sheamus, Bobby Lashley, and Austin Theory in one triple threat, and the other, I can't believe I'm even saying this, Rey Mysterio, Edge, and AJ Styles. If you told me this match was happening in 2006, I would have been losing my mind. Rey Mysterio is a world champion in 2006. Edge was a world champion in 2006. And AJ Styles was arguably the hottest wrestler in at least TNA, but the world in 2006. So to have these three guys in a triple threat tonight on SmackDown, I think is going to be fantastic. Edge put out a video though, saying that he, his run is coming to an end here sooner rather than later, and he doesn't know when it's going to end. But winning this title could be a great way to kind of close out on his terms. If you recall, Edge did not lose the World Heavyweight Championship in 2011. He had to relinquish it and retire effectively from wrestling until 2020. So it'd be a great story to see him try to win this title. I do think Edge is going to win the triple threat match, and then whoever he has to face in that second match, I think we're going to see Edge win that. And dare I say, we get Edge versus Seth freaking Rollins at Night of Champions. And if you recall the last time Seth Rollins and Edge fought in Saudi Arabia, it was in the great Hell in a Cell match between the two back in 2021, I believe. But that was a great match, and it really was one of the best Hell in a Cell matches since the pay-per-view was invented. Now this one wasn't at the pay-per-view, but it was a Hell in a Cell match that was, for a storyline to conclude. Like, this was why it needed to happen. That's why we had Finn Balor and Edge at WrestleMania this past year, doing the same type of thing. So give me Edge versus Seth freaking Rollins at Night of Champions. Hell, let's have Edge win the damn thing. Seth, I think, is going to end up with this title one way or the other at some point, and I do think potentially at SummerSlam you get that rematch. But let's give Edge the strap. Let's give Edge the strap at Night of Champions. That's how I'm predicting it. But any of the other five guys could potentially win on those triple threats, and then final match on SmackDown, and it could be someone else against Seth Rollins. So, that remains to be seen, but I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. And I don't know, it's exciting. As frustrating as it can be in the dichotomy of Roman Reigns being a champion for so long, which is so great, and I'm glad that they're doing this reign, pun intended, for so long, and the longevity of it for the record books, and kind of rewriting history in that regard, and him being like a year away from dethroning that January 84 to February of 88 Hogan reign, which would be, that would be something if they could pull that off. But, let's hold our horses until we get to that point. But I think it could happen. But as that's going on, introducing this new big gold belt with the WWE logo in the middle of it, I like the intrigue. I like having new champions and new challengers and new matchups and just exciting new storylines coming from it. And I think Night of Champions, even though it's a Saudi show, normally those don't have the greatest cards overall, but some of the matches have been stellar. Like I said, the Seth and Edge Hell in a Cell match, the Brock Roman Crown Jewel match from, I believe, October of 21, I really enjoyed. So I do think that there's some good matches that do happen at these shows, and I'm hoping that we get another one coming up in a couple of weeks. So that's the next show. That's the next PLE, is the Night of Champions in Saudi. Looking forward to that. But, man, what a week. What a fun little show we've had today. Been fun discussing all these. The streaming deal with AEW, the Backlash chaos, the great crowd in Puerto Rico, Dynamite with an unbelievable cage match and fun storyline turns, finally. We're getting the Double or Nothing 4 Pillars match coming up. In a couple weeks, we're going to do a pay-per-view predictions show, but it's going to be, we got 2 different shows to review or to preview, so could see a couple of episodes that week for the feed. So I'm looking forward to just back-to-back wrestling. It's also rumored that Labor Day is going to have the All Out show, and it's rumored that Saturday will be a WWE PLE, which could be that international or Australia potentially housing show. So look, people can say, oh, they're infringing on AEW's time, or AEW's running pay-per-views during WWE, or man, I don't care. I'm a fan. I'm stoked that I get Saturday and Sunday of a pay-per-view back-to-back, and I get one on Memorial Day, Labor Day. It's best for business, and I don't mean that as a wrestling term, but it really, really is. You get these crazy streaming deals, everybody's happier, the work gets better, people get paid better maybe, and the morale goes up, and you get better matches as a result, and I think that's better for everybody involved. So let's keep this train rolling, man. Wrestling's great right now, and when wrestling's great, it's damn fantastic. So I'm Juice Springsteen. This has been the Juice Box for this week. Cannot wait to discuss more next week to see what the huge announcement really is with AEW. Cannot wait for that. As always, juicystein.podbean.com, Google Podcasts, search the Juice Box, and as well on iTunes. Rate this 5 stars and drop a review if you do have the time. That would be great. On Instagram, Juicy Wrestling Closet, and on Twitter, as always. I do some Twitter spaces every now and again, and I kind of hop in and out of Ticket Drews or anybody who has one on there. I like to throw my hat into the ring to discuss wrestling, as I do every week, right here, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, every Friday on The Juice Box. I'm Juice Springsteen, and I'll see you guys next week with another episode of The Juice Box. That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.